Hey Tyler, Jasmine here doing a quick video critique. I love that you went ahead and started shading Mia here and taking a look at what you have. And let me just pull up this style frame too. I'm looking at it and it's awesome. I love the progress that you made. A couple things, and I didn't notice you said you went away from the tutu. Definitely can go back to revisit that. In a fast way, if you wanted, not to say you should go back to a tutu, but if you did, you could, duplicate this this model, the model here, and kind of layer it and test it out that way. But I haven't done it myself, so that was just my quick way of like looking at it and seeing like how you can create that layering effect. But that being said, I like your new choice as well. So let's go back to your shaded version. First off, I like how you pretty much stuck to your style frame, which is great. That's the intention. The first thing that did stand out to me though is the hair. So the tricky thing, if you'll find out about textures, is dealing with the UVs and the patterns, especially when you have something with patterns. It's hard to get away with things, right? Because you're going to see it. And I'm seeing it in two instances here specifically where, I like that you're adding the detail in the hair, but you could see if you look closely, it's breaking a little. Like you can see that the texture is not exactly lining up with the model here. And for some reason, I don't know why, but it's like, I guess in the texture map, you tell me, but it seems like she's got white streaks along with the brown, which could be a very hipster look, I don't know. But what I'm seeing is that it's stretching to me. That's the word I'm looking for. Where I see that it's too, what's the word? It's not natural, right? It feels just like what it is, a texture just put onto this model, and feels a little forced and unnatural. What I would do is kind of pull back from this. First start with like a solid base. Let me look at your reference again on the hair. So the hair you have here is a lot more subtle, right? We're not getting as much of a definition as you are in your actual model. Like for here, this girl right here, this child, is essentially dark, like brown throughout with subtle highlights kind of coming through. So I would kind of go more that route at first, and then so make it kind of more solid, so you get you don't get this stretching here, and then go in and you can actually like paint it very strategically, but I would keep it subtle, so it's not as it's more natural as in your reference. And then another thing with the stretching here, I'm also seeing it in your pattern here for the owls, and you can see that by I'm looking at your owl pattern, the original one, and even I know this is just a 2D plot, but like you could see that this is how it should go onto the shirt, where here it's a lot tighter and longer, where it's just being stretched. So that's where you really want to look at the UVs and use the UV grid to first make sure that the UVs are all lined up and you're getting the nice kind of square on the UVs, so that way when you put on your texture, it's not going to stretch. The cowl neck looks really awesome. It's a really great match to your reference here, and I like it. I don't have much to say about it. I would love to see more of a close-up on that to see what the displacement or the bump is doing. But overall, I think that's great. Speaking of bump, I like your ears, going back to these ears, but the bump is a little bit too hard. It's feeling, instead of like this plush bunny ears, it's feeling almost like plaster. It's feeling like very hard to me. I don't feel like I can squeeze it. And I think it's due to the fact that the bump is feeling very sharp and tight. Where if you look at your reference, you're not really getting that really tight, fine bump. It's more of like an overall softness. So I'd work on achieving that, coming back with that, and even like have fun with it. Like add some color gradient in there too. Like the color, the pink in here, I love how, it's probably a lot to the shading, but in a way we have the ability to add a little bit more color variation than just like the plain pink here, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then moving on to the skin, I think the skin is looking really great actually. I checked, it might be a little bit too much subsurface here in the nose area, but I feel like, she is getting that skin feel, which is really nice. And the eyes are looking nice. It's a little bit too reflective right now, I will say. I'm losing her definition of the iris and the pupil, but that just might be more of all the reflection cards and whatnot. But that's something to keep out for, maybe to make the pupil a little less reflective as a property, so it kind of punches out and doesn't get all fogged up in there. And as for the skirt, I see that you changed it to a cloth. My one question is, in your reference, your skirt looks more like a velvety type material, and I'm not quite reading that necessarily yet in the skirt that you have. Whenever I have memories of velvet, actually, when I was first learning too, because there's actually like pretty solid examples of velvet materials and shaders, and I was like looking it up a little bit, and if you just look up velvet shaders, you'll find quite a few number of shaders that are about velvet, and they're pretty interesting. I think the biggest thing for velvet when I was first learning is it's a great example of the facing ratio property that you can utilize within the shader, and that's where it's kind of around the edges, you can I'm totally gonna fail at explaining this right now, but facing ratio is where you can distinctly say, like, around the edges it's a different type of property than in the center, let's say. So you can really see it here. You could see it here too. And velvet has that property where it folds, you'll see, like here, it just picks up light in a different way. So that's something that I look into if you are aiming to do more of a velvet type material, like in your reference here, because it's not quite there yet in your material. And then moving on to the boots, let's see. The boots are looking good. They're looking a little bit, compared to the reference, they're looking a lot darker. I don't know if that was intentional, but that was my first thing that I saw. They're pretty dark and saturated, where here it feels like a little bit lighter and paler, right? So that's something to look out for. And I'm looking at the spec on it. I mean, the ones you showed are pretty matte. They're not super specular compared to some other rain boots. I'd even say, looking at the reference back and forth, that you can ease up on the specular and the highlights a little bit, make them softer, because even in the reference you're not getting, they're getting the hits, the spec hits, but they're more diffused, they're more soft. You're not getting those sharp hits that you're getting right now here. So that is something that I would adjust in the shader. And overall, I think that's a great start, and I would hit those notes and then come back, and I can't wait to see her. Okay, if you have any questions, you know where I am, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.